All right, jumping right into it. Today, we're going deep on Andrew Tate.
Deep dive is right.
3 YouTube interviews. You picked them out for us. One where he's with like a therapist.
Oh, yeah.
One about getting rich. And then the last one, all about his whole Matrix thing. I mean, you're obviously fascinated by him. And I got to say, I kind of am too. This guy, he really gets people talking.
No doubt about it. He's polarizing for sure.
Definitely.
But I think what really gets me is how he uses these interviews, not just what he says, but how he presents himself, how he frames his experiences. It's all very deliberate, especially for those young men watching.
Yeah, totally. Like, take his view on fear. Most people that try to avoid it, right? But this guy, he almost like seeks it out. Even says he loves that feeling of unresolved fear. I think there was that one part he said, if someone offered me a pill to make my fears vanished, I'd say absolutely not. Where's the fun in that? Wild. Her.
It is. It really goes against, most therapeutic approaches see fear as something to, understand and manage. But Tate, he almost sees it as like a source of energy, almost like fueling him. It actually might line up with this psychological thing called sensation seeking. Have you heard of it?
I haven't, no.
So it's basically this trait, and people who are hiding it, they crave these really intense experiences, even if they're, risky.
So for Tate, fear isn't something to conquer, but something that drives him.
I think you're getting it.
Makes you wonder if that ties into how he defines success and power then. I mean, the guy is all about competence, achievement, that material wealth, very driven, very goal-oriented. He even said once that stress and anxiety are good because they push you to be more productive. It's like, what?
Absolutely. And if you really look closely at it, you can see a thread of, I don't know, maybe utilitarianism in his whole worldview. It's like everything's a means to an end. And that end, maximizing your potential, whatever that means to him. Remember that analogy he made about having 40 supercars?
Oh, yeah. How can I forget?
So the only thing better than having everything you want is not wanting anything at all. It's like he's, I don't know, conquered desire or something, at least in his mind.
But wouldn't that be exhausting? Like always striving, never truly feeling content.
Right. That's I guess you could say, the potential downside of this hyper-focused way of thinking, this never-ending cycle of achievement, but never actually, enjoying the moment.
And then you get to another area where Tate really, I don't know, stirs the pot. His views on gender. Very traditional masculinity. Men are protectors of women, that kind of thing. He even claims that men are more willing to suffer for, I guess, the greater good. Brings up things like, men on the Titanic or men fighting in wars. There's even this one quote. He says, men have evolved to protect women. Women have not evolved to protect men. Really lays it out there, doesn't he?
It's definitely a strong statement. I think it's really important to, approach these claims carefully. Critically even, because historical factors, societal factors, they've definitely shaped these traditional gender roles we see. But to say it's all evolution, that's a bit of an oversimplification, don't you think? Human behavior, it's just more complex than that. Biology, culture, individual experience, it's all mixed up in there.
So it's not as clear-cut as Tate makes it seem. Okay, so speaking of clear-cut, let's get to his Matrix stuff. He uses that whole metaphor to talk about, these forces in society, governments, the media, big corporations, all of them controlling everything, like in the movie.
Right.
And get this, he even says he does those controversial things on purpose to make people think. And he uses this phrase, challenge the Overton window.
The Overton window. Now, that's a fascinating concept. It's, basically the range of opinions that people consider acceptable in public, at any given time.
So Tate's saying by being so outrageous, he's forcing people to rethink what's normal or acceptable.
Exactly. And does that make sense, though? Like, is shocking people really the best way to get them thinking critically?
Or does it just backfire and reinforce their existing biases?
And that's a really good question. It speaks to how complicated this approach really is because, you could see it as, a valid way to start a conversation, get a debate going. But you could also say it just causes more division, makes people dig in even deeper. It's tough to say, for sure.
Always more to it with Tate, isn't there? But I think we got to address the big thing, right? His legal situation.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't just ignore that. It's a pretty big part of the whole story here.
Definitely. Being arrested and then house arrest in Romania on, the human trafficking charges, it's It's serious enough.
Oh, kidding.
But even facing those charges, he's like, nope, I'm innocent, and spins the whole thing saying it's all an attempt to silence him.
Yeah.
He's got this whole thing, this yes, thank you mantra,
Right.
like almost surrendering to something bigger and, I don't know, finding opportunity in the middle of a really bad situation.
Well, it's definitely an interesting way to cope. Imagine that, those accusations, the stress. I mean, it would be intense. But instead, he chooses to see it as a test, a challenge. Gives him the sense of control when, I mean, in reality, so much is out of his hands.
And control, it really does seem to be at the core of so much of what he teaches, especially to, those young guys who follow him. Discipline, self-reliance, none of that victim mentality stuff.
It's almost like he's laying out like I don't know, a blueprint for how to be a man, in his eyes at least. All about strength, not showing your emotions, and just constantly chasing success.
Right. He's always going on about how men today have been, like, weakened or something by society. And if they follow his way, his rules, they can get that power back.
And he is very, very proud of how well he communicates all of this. Sees language as a weapon, almost, a tool to get what he wants.
It's interesting, right? It shows that he really gets how powerful words can be, how you present things, the stories you tell. It can really change how people see the world, even themselves.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, he even says that young men are drawn to him because he, and I quote, makes them feel good, gives them, like, direction, a purpose they haven't found anywhere else. Do you think there's any truth to that?
I mean, it's possible, right? Think about it. Being young, trying to figure out who you are, what you believe in, your place in the world, it can be confusing. So yeah, if you're feeling lost and here comes Tate, confident, successful, acting like he has all the answers, it's going to be appealing to some people.
Makes sense. It's like skip all the hard parts, all the doubt, and jumps right to winning.
That's a good way to put it. And for someone who's maybe struggling with their self-esteem or doesn't know what they want to do, that message is powerful stuff. But it's also important to remember this is just one perspective, one way of looking at things.
For sure. And when you look at how he talks about legacy, his legacy, it's all about being remembered for bravery. In that interview with a therapist, he says he wants to be remembered as someone who always made, and again I'm quoting here, the brave choice.
That hero image, that warrior fighting against whatever holding people back, keeping them trapped in the matrix, it's very much a part of how he sees himself.
But is that really it, though? Or is it just a way to justify, some of his more extreme views?
I mean, that's what we're trying to figure out, right? Is he genuine? Does he actually want to help people? Or is it all just an act to get more power?
Big questions. And what about his followers, all those young guys? I mean, what kind of impact is this stuff having on them?
That's where things get really, really complicated. Because, yeah, on one hand, his whole self-improvement, discipline message, that could be motivator for some people, push them to work harder, set goals.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, his views on what it means to be a man, the power stuff, that dominance, it can be really harmful too. Reinforce those toxic stereotypes, lead to unhealthy behavior.
So it's not black and white. There's a good and bad, all mixed up. It's pretty interesting, though, how his brave choice so often seems to be, well, making a lot of money.
Totally. His view on wealth, it's not just something nice to have. It's like central to his whole philosophy. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Money equals freedom. Escape the matrix. Live life however you want. And he really believes that anyone can get rich, like really rich, if they just, I don't know, think the right way and work hard enough.
It's almost like, I don't know, like a prosperity gospel, but for the internet age.
Huh?
He's all about studying the game of wealth, playing it right, doesn't want to change the system, just win within it.
But wouldn't that take, I don't know, a certain ruthlessness? Doesn't he ever talk about ethics? How your actions impact others?
Right. And that's a really, really important point because his focus on the individual, it often seems to, well, come at the expense of everyone else. Winning is everything, even if it means taking advantage of people.
Like his yes, thank you in action, get what you can, even if it's from someone else's bad luck. And at the end of the day, he seems to be saying if you get rich enough and think the right way, you can, like, transcend the matrix, break free from the system.
It's a very seductive idea. Total freedom, total control. But is it real? Can you really escape everything just by getting rich? Or are you just, playing a different game with the same rules?
Yeah, trading one set of rules for another, right? And even if you win, if you get all that money, does it really make you happy? Does it fulfill you?
Those are the questions they need to think about. And it gets to the heart of why we're doing this whole deep dive, right? We're not telling you what to think about Andrew Tate. We just want to help you understand what he's saying and, what it all might mean.
Exactly. We're just laying it all out there. The good, the bad, all the complicated stuff. It's up to each person to decide what they believe, what they agree with, what they don't.
Yeah, and it's about thinking critically. Don't just take things at face value, whether it's from Tate or, I mean, anyone really.
Right. Question everything. Do your research. And most importantly, form your own opinions.
Because in a world where everyone's trying to tell you what to think, that ability to think for yourself, it's more valuable than ever.
Absolutely. So as we move to the final part of our deep dive, let's, I don't know, try to pull it all together, see if we can make any conclusions about Andrew Tate and, well, his impact on the world. All right, so we've really gone in deep here, huh? Tate's whole thing with fear, his views on men and women, the matrix, those legal issues, his advice, and of course that money, money, money philosophy. Like, what's the takeaway? Is there, I don't know, a common thread running through it all?
Well, one thing that really keeps coming up for me, it's control. I mean, it seems like that's a huge part of what he does, what he says. Control his emotions, control his own future, control his image, even, control how other people play the game of life, whatever that means to him.
That's interesting. I never really thought about it that way. But it makes sense when you think about, his background, kickboxer, champion, right? That's got to be all about control.
Yeah, absolutely. Physical control, mental control, you got to have it all. And I mean, you can see how that kind of experience could shape your whole view of the world. In the ring, it's you versus an opponent. You got to be strategic, one step ahead, and at the end, someone wins, someone loses.
So maybe he's taking that same approach and applying it to, well, everything. Life's a challenge, got to conquer it, got to win. Got to be the one in control, setting the rules.
Yeah, I think you're right. And maybe that's why so many young guys are drawn to what he's saying, because the world can feel pretty chaotic sometimes, right? Like you don't know what's going to happen next. But Tate, he's offering this sense of order, this clear path to success. Like, hey, take control and you can make your own destiny.
But doesn't that kind of thinking have, I don't know, some downsides? What about all the stuff you just can't control? Life throws curveballs, right? How does he deal with that?
That's the question, isn't it? He doesn't really talk about that stuff much. It's like if you follow his plan, you won't have those problems.
Yeah, like it's some magic formula or something.
Right, and that's where I think things get a little, I don't know, unrealistic. Because the reality is, life is unpredictable. Stuff happens. Sometimes, no matter how hard you try, how much control you think you have, it just, well, it doesn't go your way.
So then what? Do we just, give up and say, okay, life's chaos, whatever?
I wouldn't say that. I think it's about finding a balance. Having goals, working hard, taking responsibility, that's all good stuff. But you also got to be able to adapt, Be resilient because things are going to go wrong sometimes.
It's like that saying, control what you can control and let go of the rest.
There you go. And I think that's a really important piece that, honestly, I don't see much in what Tate's saying. He's so focused on winning, on being dominant, that there's not much room for being vulnerable, admitting you don't have all the answers. Life's messy sometimes.
It is. And it makes me think about you, the listener, and why you wanted us to dig into these videos. I mean, clearly you're interested in this guy. What makes him tech? Why do people listen to him?
And so what do you think, after all of this, where do you land on Tate? Is he empowering? Is he dangerous? Both. Something else entirely.
We've talked about a lot, the good and the bad and everything in between. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? That's up to you.
But if there's one thing to take away from this deep dive, it's the importance of, thinking for yourself. Just blindly accept what anyone tells you, whether it's Tate or, anyone.
Exactly. Question everything. Look into it yourself. And, come to your own conclusion.
Because there's so much information out there these days, everyone's trying to get you to buy something, believe something. The ability to think critically, that's like a superpower.
Absolutely. So as you keep, exploring this whole Andrew Tate thing, all the different ideas, just remember, stay curious, don't believe everything you hear, and keep asking questions.
Keep learning, keep exploring, and, keep challenging yourself to, really think about things and see the world from different angles.
That's it for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep those questions coming, and as always, keep diving deep.